Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy today. 3 must-draft wide receivers for your 2023 fantasy football teams. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel as well. Man, it feels like football is so far away. We have our Twitch betting show lines at lunch, betting on baseball. I've decided, fuck baseball, I'm going to bet on the CFL. I so desperately need football back in my life. It's the dog days right now. We're getting some videos out to you guys without those training camp news, without anything to really kind of feed off of in terms of player performance. So a lot of these guys are how I feel heading into the season. And we've got 3 guys for you here. Before we get to the players, I do have a couple comments from previous videos that we haven't covered last week, and I want to make sure we talk about them. So if you guys have any questions, any comments on these players, on any other players, on draft strategy, whatever it might be, do drop your comments down below. But the first one I have here is from Zach Zarb. He's got a keeper league. He said, in a 4-keeper league where I already kept Jay Jettas, Waddle, and Garrett Wilson, who do you keep between Breece and Ramondre? I think this is a great time to answer this question, like on the note I said of, we're in this lull period of, of course, football to talk about and get us ready for our fantasy season, but there's no actionable stuff going on the field. And I think that's pretty impactful when you try to make this decision. I think if you have as much, if you have time in your fantasy draft isn't until, which I would recommend being the week leading up to the season, I'd wait to make this decision as long as possible, because I would right now, had to make a decision, I'd take Breece Hall. But it seems like the Jets are a little interested in Dalvin Cook, and that's an indication to me of we're not that confident Breece Hall is going to be ready for the start of the season. Obviously, he got hurt about 7 weeks into the year, which is a problem when it comes to coming back from an ACL injury. It's not something with a great track record in year 1. So in that situation where if Dalvin Cook is signed, I would probably pivot to Ramondre, because I do have Ramondre ahead in my rankings, but that's more baking in the concern with Breece Hall's injury, because his talent is off the charts. We talked about it in our running back rankings video that this comment came from. It's hard to not want to include him in your top 5 if he was healthy. But right now, if we see anything out with Dalvin Cook, I would probably go Ramondre. Just because I feel very safe with Ramondre, but Breece Hall has number one running back overall ceiling. I don't think Ramondre does, but I still very high on Ramondre. The second one, also from the running back rankings video, which I think I need to do a better job of when I rewatch the video. So it's from D-Town Relics. He said, not sure why you knocked Jonathan Taylor for coming back from injury, but not Tony Pollard. And love this comment, because you know what? I watched the video back and I kind of agree. It was a little bit of a situation where I don't know what it is. I just have a problem with drafting Jonathan Taylor. He's like an ick guy to me heading into the year. But I think the big thing for me is that, yes, both these guys were hurt last year, Pollard even later in the year. But for Taylor, he had his ankle surgery after the season was over. So both of them coming to the year with a significant injury, like an ankle surgery is definitely a big injury. Pollard with the fibula, and then the high ankle sprain is a concern. But the big difference is Pollard was present at OTAs and on the field participating. Jonathan Taylor, you can't say that about. So I like having a little bit more positivity. I'm also not very high on the Colts offense either. And if it's Anthony Richardson, QB, could steal some opportunities for Taylor from that touchdown perspective. And then for Pollard, Zeke leaves 12 touchdowns for him to scoop up. He was the RB7 with Zeke scoring 12 touchdowns. So I see the higher ceiling with Pollard. That's the big reason why, but I definitely understand the comment there and appreciate all the comments you guys drop in the videos. But let's get to our 3 must-draft wide receivers. First guy up, and maybe my favorite of the 3, is Chris Godwin. Right now he's going as the wide receiver 27 at the end of the 5th, early 6th round. Last season he finished as the wide receiver 20, and there's a lot to get into because there's a coaching change here in Tampa Bay, or at least the offensive coordinator spot, that we need to discuss and how this breaks out into the upcoming year. And of course, the quarterback change too with Tom Brady's retirement. So 137 targets last year. Crazy number, 11th at the position, 104 receptions, 6th at the position, and of all receivers that posted 50-plus receptions, only Deebo Samuel and Greg Dortch had a lower average depth of target. That tells me with Chris Godwin, this is a guy that is predicated on getting substantial volume, isn't going to be a guy making big plays downfield very often, isn't going to be looked downfield very often. He's going to live in those intermediate areas of the field, asked to make and create yards after the catch. That is the job, of course, of Mike Evans from that deep ball perspective. The Bucs led the league in pass rate, almost 68%, 67.9%. Now make the change at OC with Dave Canales. And I do think there's a few things to get into. Of course, the pass volume is definitely, undoubtedly going to decrease. Like almost a 70% pass rate, I definitely think it's going to decrease for this team. Now, they're not a team that's going to be as competitive and as good, so there could be more pass volume from that perspective. But the Seahawks, under Canales, were 13th, almost 60% pass rate, so still pretty solid, still above the league average. And I think what's important to keep in mind is hiring an OC that was the pass game and QB's coach. That's a guy that might be a little more likely to focus on the pass game. The Bucs were also very heavy passing on early downs. I think if you're a Bucs fan, it probably drove you nuts, but you couldn't run the ball, so I can't really blame the Bucs for using Tom Brady and his arm in those situations, especially with less of a pass rush threat, which we'll get into a little bit later. But the Seahawks were still a team that liked to throw the ball on first down too. They were 7th in first down pass rate. So again, this is still going to be a team that passes the ball. I think this is a player that's really getting discounted because they expect this offense to like fall off of a cliff and probably not throw the ball as much. I think they're going to throw the ball a ton, and we'll get into a little bit more of what I think about Tom Brady's performance this past season. But just again, sticking with the OC here, he really emphasized, and from his media availability in this offseason so far, has talked about taking care of the football. And that doesn't necessarily mean, we're going to run the ball, but he cited the hiring of the Cowboys running back coach, Skip Peete, who, under his tutelage, the running backs for the Cowboys didn't lose a fumble the entire year last year. So a credit to taking care of the football. And I think beyond just running the ball, they're going to look at keeping that average depth of target that Tom Brady had last year, which was really low. It was, 7.3 yards, 32nd at the position. They're going to keep it probably relatively low, keep things closer to the line of scrimmage to ensure they're taking care of the ball through the air as well. Geno was a pretty low average depth of target. He ranked 20th amongst quarterbacks at 8.2 yards, so not far off from Brady. And again, this is a testament in my mind to Chris Godwin still being the focal point of this offense and having a significant target share. Mike Evans hasn't posted a target share above 20% in the last 3 seasons now. Actually, 3 seasons since 2019. I think the drop-off in quarterback play isn't going to be nearly as substantial. The drop-off in pass rate isn't going to be nearly as substantial as people might think. Brady was pressured on only 19.4% of dropbacks. The next closest guy was just over 25%, a massive gap. And that's not because this offensive line was fantastic. It's because Brady was absolutely terrified of making plays under pressure because he was brutal under pressure last year. I think with Baker Mayfield likely to be a quarterback, he's someone that won't get rid of the football so quickly, and that will open up some more efficient passing opportunities for this team. And again, obviously the Geno Smith rise under Dave Canales is something to pay attention to. Potential with Baker Mayfield. I mean, he was the number 1 overall pick. There's talent to be taken from him and to perform in this offense. So I really like Chris Godwin. This ADP is out of control. I think he's easily a top 20 wide receiver on the season. So I'm definitely drafting him like it. My second guy here, and probably one I think a lot of you guys and people who don't watch my videos might just, hopefully the Chris Godwin sell job was good enough for you, but might just, exit the video, find another one. Courtland Sutton, okay? Wide receiver 39 at ADP. He's going at the end of the 8th round. He was the wide receiver 43 in 2022, so didn't really meet this ADP in performance last year. Had 104 targets, pretty solid, 26th at the position. 64 receptions, not quite as good, 34th at the position. 25 deep targets, which were 11th at the position, but Russell Wilson was not converting those deep targets. This Broncos offense was atrocious under Nathaniel Hackett last year. And now we get Sean Payton at head coach, and I think this is going to provide substantial value to Courtland Sutton. You need to hear me out here because I'm very familiar with this offense. Joe Lombardi is now coming in as the offensive coordinator. He leaves the Chargers to reunite with Peyton. They've been together for a number of years before Peyton left the league. The year prior. So what's really valuable about in this offense in the pass game is the X receiver role. That was the role for Michael Thomas in New Orleans under Lombardi, and Mike Williams. Mike Williams' role in the Chargers offense got a significant upgrade when Joe Lombardi stepped in as the offensive coordinator 2 years ago. Williams finished as the wide receiver 10 in 2021 and the wide receiver 20 in 2022. And again, he is the X wide receiver for the Chargers. That is what the role will be for Courtland Sutton as that guy that runs his routes on the outside for this Broncos offense as well. Williams went from a career-high 90 receptions in the seasons prior to 129 99 in 2021 and 93 in 2022, despite only playing 13 games. I think Sutton is going to get this role. I know Jerry Jeudy is the guy everyone wants to talk about as the guy that's really going to elevate his performance in fantasy football because of Sean Payton's arrival. I think both these guys can be great. Like, Keenan Allen was great. Obviously, we had a better quarterback in Justin Herbert for these two guys, but I still think the Sean Payton offense, the Joe Lombardi offense, is capable of having two fantasy relevant guys. And I don't think we're getting a good discount in terms of where Judy's being drafted compared to where Courtland Sutton's being drafted. Sutton we're getting in that later round that I think can provide substantial value for you as a 9th round, 8th round type of guy. I think this offense will be much more selective with their downfield passing game because Russ wanted to push the ball downfield a ton. That's what he was doing in Seattle. He was doing it too much, I think, for an offense that was completely lacking any type of efficiency in Denver last year. If you look at Justin Herbert, he had one of the lowest ADOTs in the league the last 2 seasons, which I think isn't ideal for him as a quarterback. He's a fantastic arm, a fantastic downfield passer. But despite the fact Herbert's ADOT was really low, Williams still maintained to be a top 20 receiver in yards per reception. So there were still explosive plays to be made. That could still happen for Courtland Sutton, but I like his volume increasing and his catch rate increasing substantially because he'll get some safer, more efficient passes from that catch rate perspective. So believe it or not, I think this could be the year on Courtland Sutton to substantially return his value in terms of his ADP, unlike what we've seen the last few years. I'm a believer in Sean Payton kind of reviving this team offensively heading into 2023. Before we get to the last player, today's video is sponsored by Peace Collective. Just got some awesome gear, vintage sports apparel. My Chargers gear is here from Peace Collective. If you guys want to go check them out, you're going to get awesome vintage sports apparel from some of your favorite teams, the NFL, MLB, NBA, whatever it is, crew necks, t-shirts, hats as well, sweaters. If you use promo code OwnersBox10, you'll get 10% off. That link will be in the description and as well in the pinned comments if you guys want to go check them out. Love getting the stuff from them. Some awesome stuff to help me suit up for the season. So our third guy, last guy on my board here for my 3 must-draft wide receivers is going to be a guy that is very easy to explain away to you guys. It is Brandon Aiyuk. This will be short and sweet. This guy is being drafted as the wide receiver 32, going in the 7th round. I can't understand it because this would be like near his worst fantasy finish of his career. He's never finished outside of the top 36, and he's being drafted as the wide receiver 32. Some of you guys might not be able to guess what his finish was last year. It was the wide receiver 15. He was the wide receiver 15. He was almost a wide receiver 1 last season in this uber competitive offense when it comes to targets. He had 112, 23rd at the position. He had 78 receptions, 18th at the position. Obviously found the end zone 8 times, so a very efficient year from that perspective, which was great for him. But I think he's the most overlooked fantasy asset in the entire class this season, I would say, because of that competition like we talked about. Yet, he still managed a 23.5% target share last year, 23rd at the position. And 23rd obviously is not top 15, but when you're in an offense as efficient as San Francisco's, you can really turn that target share into significant production, and he did exactly that. Even when Kittle, Debo, and CMC were on the field, 7 weeks, he was still the wide receiver 15 in points per game. With all those guys on the field, he was still that good. Debo was the wide receiver 30 in that stretch. I think it's time we start paying more attention to Brandon Aiyuk as the wide receiver to own in this offense over Debo Samuel. He's been incredibly productive in a competitive offense, while Debo seems to be the guy that's paying the price for the arrival of CMC, not Brandon Aiyuk. He was on pace for over 1,000 yards and 80 receptions. He was on pace to have a better year when CMC played for the 11 weeks than what his entire total was on the season this past year. So CMC's arrival is not impacting Brandon Aiyuk's fantasy value, and there's way too many fantasy managers who think that is the case. So you've got to be drafting Brandon Aiyuk because, again, his floor is basically what you're getting him at right now, and the ceiling is what we just saw last season, probably a wide receiver 15, potentially top 12 season for him because Brock Purdy is in a quarterback, and with Brock Purdy, he actually averaged the most targets per game between Purdy, Garoppolo, and Trey Lance. So this seems to be the best guy for Aiyuk too, and Purdy was great in his 7 games. His 8.1 yards per attempt was 3rd amongst quarterbacks. His 67.1% completion percentage was 7th amongst quarterbacks. He was on pace for over 30 touchdowns. I mean, this offense was fantastic to end the year. If Brock Purdy's healthy and available, it's even better for Aiyuk's value. But regardless, if Sam Darnold's at quarterback, if Trey Lance is at quarterback, if one of my favorite college football quarterbacks that probably isn't playing football anymore for the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, Cole McDonald's at quarterback, I still think Brandon Aiyuk can meet his current ADP as the wide receiver 32. You've got to draft him this year. So make sure you're drafting him, make sure you're drafting Courtland Sutton, and of course, make sure you're drafting Chris Godwin. Those are my 3 must-draft wide receivers for this season. If you guys enjoyed the video, help us get to 30,000 subscribers. We're almost there, so please drop a sub, like the video if you enjoyed, and of course, we're always going to be answering your comments. So if you have any comments, questions, concerns, some of these guys you hate, I'm sure I'm going to be hearing about it from Courtland Sutton. Be sure to let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.